Yes. We're sleeping together. He's better now. Get out. She shouted at our party, so I raised my glass and left. Now he's dumped her, and her reputation is ruined. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. When I met Lena, she felt like sunlight after a long grey winter. She was all charm and motion, always surrounded by people, always laughing a little too loud, always talking with her hands. I'm not the kind of guy who fills a room like that. I'm more of a stay in the corner with a drink and watch kind of person. But Lena had this way of making you feel like you were the only one she saw. When we started dating, she used to say, I balanced her, that I grounded her wild energy. I like that. It made me feel like maybe being quiet had its place. I'm Ethan. 28, an architect. I don't make six figures or post gym selfies, but I'm steady. I work. I come home. I cook. I listen. That's who I am. And for the first year, it worked. Lena worked in PR, which, if you've ever dated someone in that field, means constant networking, drinks with clients, party, and a lot of just friends who all happen to be very good-looking men. I didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend. I told myself she was just friendly. There were little moments, though, like the night she came home from an event laughing about how one of her co-workers, Dylan, jokingly proposed after their client meeting. I laughed too. But something in her tone bothered me. That slight blush that didn't sound like embarrassment, but pride, or the time she told me, half teasing, you could be a bit more spontaneous. Mark from work took his girlfriend to Paris for the weekend. Imagine that. I shrugged it off. I'm not competing with your co-workers. Lena, she rolled her eyes. You're so sensitive sometimes. I should have said something stronger, but I didn't. Because back then, I thought love was about being understanding, about trusting, even when something in your gut twists. When we moved in together, things seemed stable again. We got this cozy 2-bedroom apartment near the river. My first place that actually felt like ours. We spent weeks painting walls, picking furniture, fighting about curtains. It felt domestic in the best way. So when Lena suggested we throw a housewarming party, I agreed immediately. She was excited. Almost too much. So she made a guest list, ordered catering, and spent 3 days curating the perfect playlist. Ethan, she said, while hanging fairy lights on the balcony, this is going to be our night. You'll finally meet everyone from my office. Her tone made it sound like an honor. I didn't think much of it. I figured fine. I'll meet the people she always talks about. Her PR team, Herr Boss, and yes, Dylan. I'd heard his name often enough by now that it didn't even sting anymore. Or maybe I just told myself that in the week leading up to the party, Lena was glued to her phone, constant message, new outfit deliveries, makeup tutorials blaring from her tablet. She was obsessed with how the night would look, the photos, the crowd, the impression. At one point, I asked, you sure this is about celebrating the new place and not your personal PR event? She laughed. Oh, come on. You're adorable when you try to joke. You'll thank me when everyone's impressed with how perfect everything looks. That word perfect came up a lot with her. Perfect apartment, perfect outfit, perfect image. I don't think she ever cared about real, just about how real looked. Still, I went along. I bought new shirts, cleaned the place, helped set up light. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up, even when it feels like you're building something for them to stand on while you fade into the background. On the night of the party, I remember looking at her in the mirror before guests arrived. She wore this deep red dress that made her look untouchable. I said quietly, "You look beautiful." She smiled at her reflection, not at me. I know. I laughed softly, thinking she was kidding, She wasn't, if I'd known how that night would end, how that dress, that smile, and that perfect party would turn into the ugliest moment of my life, maybe I wouldn't have filled everyone's glasses so generously. Because some people don't need alcohol to lose control. They just need an audience. The night started out perfectly. That's the part that still messes with me. How normal everything was right before it all exploded. The lights were soft. The balcony was glowing. Music low but lively. People drifted in and out, laughing, drinking, clinking glasses. Lena was in her element, moving from group to group. Like she owned the air in the room. I was behind the kitchen counter, topping off champagne flutes. Every now and then, she'd look over, flash that PR, perfect smile, and touch my arm as she passed. The little gestures that used to feel like love, but now felt like branding. Then he showed up, Dylan. I recognized him instantly from photos. Tall, slick hair, suit that screamed, look at me. The kind of guy who laughs too loud, so everyone knows he's confident. Ethan. Lena called, her tone just a little too bright. This is Dylan. Finally, you two meet. I wiped my hand and shook his grip was firm, practiced. The kind of handshake that's supposed to prove dominance. I've heard a lot about you. I said politely, yeah. Same. He replied, giving a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She talks about you all the time. Lena giggled and gave his arm a playful push. Stop. Dylan. Stop. But she was grinning. People around us pretended not to notice the weird tension. I caught one of Lena's friends giving her a look, that uncomfortable tight-lipped smile people wear when they sense something's off but don't want to get involved. For most of the night, I just observed. Dylan followed her everywhere. They whispered near the balcony, laughed too close, brushed hands over plates of appetizers like it was accidental. Every time I'd walk near them, Lena would straighten up and switch to hostess mode, like nothing was happening. At one point, when she passed by me, I leaned close and said quietly, "You're being a little obvious." She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? You know what it means? She tilted her head, smirking. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. We're just having fun. Lena, you're flirting with him in front of everyone. Her eyes flashed. That defensive spark I'd seen before, maybe if you weren't standing in the corner all night, I wouldn't have to. It was a gut punch. But before I could respond, she was gone again. Laughing at something, Dylan whispered, I told myself not to cause a scene. This was her night. I talked to her after the guests left, but the universe didn't wait that long. Around midnight, the party was peaking. Someone turned up the music. People were dancing. Drinks were spilling. I was refilling a tray when I heard raised voices from the living room, Lena's and mine, except I hadn't said a word yet. I walked over, and the room was already half focused on her. She was standing by the couch, glass in hand, cheeks flushed with alcohol and ego. Dylan stood nearby, trying to look casual but enjoying every second. You know what your problem is, Ethan. She slurred slightly, her tone sharp. You're so boring. You make everything feel like a chore. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, Lena, chill. I kept my voice calm. You've had a lot to drink. Maybe we should... Ugh. Don't patronize. She cut me off, stepping closer. You think because you're quiet and stable, that makes you better. That's not love. Ethan, that's control. I blinked. Control? Yeah. She said, waving her hand, you always want everything neat. Perfect. Predictable. I can't breathe like that. I looked around. The room had gone still. Even the music felt like it was fading. Lena. I said quietly, this isn't the place. She laughed too loudly. Why not? Everyone already knows. My chest tightened. Knows what, and that's when she did it. She lifted her glass, smiled that twisted, defiant smile, and shouted, yes, we're sleeping together. He's better now. Get out. The room erupted in silence. You could hear someone drop their phone. She was pointing at Dylan. Herr Froze Mitzmirk, realizing she just made it real. For a second, no one breathed. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not confidence, not freedom, but panic hiding behind her eyes. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I picked up my glass of wine, raised it slightly, and said to Honesty. Then I set it down and walked out. No suitcase. No dramatic speech. No goodbye. Just quiet footsteps down the hallway while 30 stunned people stared at the wreckage she'd made. Behind me, someone muttered, Jesus, Lena? And she shouted again, her voice cracking. He needed to hear it. I didn't turn around, because when someone shows you that the person you loved was just a performance, you don't argue, you just leave before the curtain falls. I didn't remember walking home that night. Not really. Just flashes. The echo of her words still bouncing around my skull. The hum of streetlights. The taste of wine still in my mouth. I ended up in a hotel a few blocks away. I sat on the edge of the bed in that sterile, quiet room and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed non-stop. Texts. Missed calls. Some from friends who were there. One from Lena. Lena. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Lena, can you just come back so we can talk? Lena. It wasn't supposed to come out that way. I didn't respond. I turned the phone face down and lay back on the bed. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than shouting. There's a kind of numbness that comes after public humiliation. Not rage, not sadness, just blankness. The next morning, I checked out, went to work as if nothing had happened. Nobody there knew. Of course, I spent the day drawing blueprints, listening to the scratch of the pencil and the hum of the air conditioner. It was oddly grounding. A world that made sense, where every line meant something. By the time I got home that evening, I knew I wasn't going back to the apartment. I texted my friend Josh and asked if I could crash at his place for a bit. He didn't even ask why. He'd been at the party. When I arrived, he just handed me a beer and said, she's lost her mind. Man, I nodded. Yeah. We didn't talk about it again. Over the next few days, Lena's messages kept coming. Lena, I was drunk. Lena, you embarrassed me first. Lena, we were already falling apart. I just said what we both knew. There was no apology. Not really. Just damage control. Her version of sorry was always about optics. And sure enough, within a week, the story started spreading through mutual friends, co-workers, social media. Apparently, Lena was telling people I'd been controlling and emotionally distant, that she'd been unhappy for months, and finally snapped classic piare, move, control the narrative. It hurt. Not because I cared what strangers thought, but because I realized she'd been preparing that excuse for a while. One night, Josh said, you should post your side of it. I shook my head. No, I'm not playing her game. I meant it. Instead, I focused on detaching piece by piece. I changed my number, blocked her on everything, moved my things out with a friend while she was at work. I even told the landlord to take my name off the lease. Losing the apartment didn't bother me. It felt contaminated. Anyway, what did bother me were the quiet moments, brushing my teeth in Josh's bathroom, and realizing her toothbrush used to be next to mine, hearing a song she liked while driving, seeing a red dress in a store window. Grief has a strange way of showing up when you least expect it. But even through all that, I never broke my silence. Not once. I didn't text her, didn't stalk her profiles, didn't try to prove anything. I let her version of me live online, the boring, controlling guy, because I knew eventually she'd trip over her own lies. People like her always do. Weeks turned into months. The calls stopped. The noise faded. And something inside me started to settle. I realized that the night she screamed at me wasn't just the end of us. It was the end of the part of me that tried to earn love through patience. I'd been loyal to a performance, and when the curtain dropped, all that was left was silence. And for the first time in a long time, that silence felt like peace. It was almost 6 months later when her name came up again. Josh and I were at a small bar downtown watching a game. He leaned over and said, "You're not going to believe this. Remember Lena's agency? The one she wouldn't shut up about?" I nodded, sipping my beer. She got fired. I didn't react right away. I thought maybe he was exaggerating. But when he pulled up a screenshot of her old company's LinkedIn, her name gone from the team section, something in me went still. Apparently, she'd been caught taking credit for someone else's work during a client pitch. The same thing she used to accuse her co-workers of doing. When I got home that night, I found a few more breadcrumbs online. She deleted half her Instagram posts, switched her account to private, and some of her old friend circle had unfollowed her. I didn't smile. Not exactly, but there was a quiet, grim satisfaction in seeing the facade finally crack. Karma doesn't always arrive like a thunderclap. Sometimes it just erodes things slowly, quietly, until there's nothing left to stand on. I didn't hear from her again until almost a year after that night. It was a random Thursday. I got an email, not a text, not a call, an email. The subject line said, "Can we please talk?" Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Ethan, I know I don't deserve your time, but I've been thinking about everything. What I said that night was cruel. I was trying to hurt you because I hated how small I felt. You were always good to me, and I took advantage of that. I'm sorry." It went on for a few paragraphs about therapy, regret, understanding herself, and wanting closure. I reread it twice. There was no anger left in me by then, just like reading a letter from someone who died a long time ago. So, I didn't reply. I just closed the laptop and went back to what I was doing, finishing a sketch for a new project. That night, I realized I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I wasn't waiting for karma to destroy her or for the universe to give me justice, because the real punishment wasn't her losing her job or her friends. It was her realizing too late that she'd burned the only bridge that actually led somewhere real. I moved into my own place a few weeks later. Small, minimalist, quiet. The kind of space that didn't carry echoes. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of a red dress in a store window or hear a familiar song, and I'd feel that old flicker of memory. But it didn't sting anymore. It just passed through. The last time I saw her was by accident. I was walking to a cafe one morning, and she was sitting outside with a friend. Her hair was shorter, her expression tired. She looked up. We locked eyes for half a second. She tried to smile. I didn't. I just nodded once and kept walking, and that was it. No confrontation. No speech. No revenge. Just silence. The same silence she once mocked me for. Funny how that turned out to be my greatest weapon. Sometimes I think back to that night. The party, the shouting, the shattered look in her eyes as I walked away. It used to haunt me, wondering if I could have done something different, said something smarter, been someone stronger, but I realized I already was strong. I just didn't see it then. Strength isn't loud. It's not the toast or the comeback or the moment everyone gasps. It's the quiet decision to let go, even when you still care. Lena taught me something in her own twisted way. Some people only feel powerful when they can make you react. The moment you stop giving them that power, they lose everything. And me, I built something better from the silence she left behind. These days, I still raise my glass sometimes, not in anger, not in memory, but in gratitude, because she didn't break me. She revealed me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.